way they spoke at my small council today.
My loyalty to you is proven, my queen.
They wish to keep me here, confined.
Perhaps it is time for you to think about secreting yourself somewhere safe.
There are those of our line who never ruled. The lowborn claiming dragons. Was it her idea?
Hot diggity D for Disappointment, Season 2, or rather, the 8-hour trailer for Season 3. No acting, performance, or cinematography can ever make up for bad writing, as we're about to find out. Let me know whether or not you agree, and click the buttons if you like what you see. This is Every Error in House of the Dragon Season 2. About 10 days has passed since episode 10, but Jacaerys' hair has grown longer than Hodor's dick in that short span of time. And on the topic of the last king in the north, they say,
Surely the great Torrhen Stark would have sooner died than bent the knee, unless he believed the Conqueror could bring unity to the Seven Kingdoms.
You are right in that.
Only the widely known reason as to why Torrhen Stark bent the knee was simply because he realized his disadvantage against Aegon's mighty host and 3 dragons.
Thanks to him, our soldiers returned to their homes whole and unharmed.
Not because he necessarily believed in the project of uniting Westeros. Then Jacaerys asks why the wall was built.
What does it keep out? Death.
But despite that not answering the question whatsoever, Jacaerys doesn't follow up. As the grieving Rhaenyra is out and about, Daemon fears the worst.
What if Aemond were to happen upon her?
Then I would pity Aemond.
Well, if Syrax is such a force to be reckoned with, why not go overpower Vhagar and end the war then? Exactly, because Vhagar is that much bigger and badder.
The largest in the world.
After spending half of Season 1 making Aegon out to be an indifferent drunk who, in true Game of Thrones spirit,
Don't want it.
I did not ask for this.
I have no wish to rule!
he is now suddenly quite enthusiastic about being king, showing no signs of his previous attitude from just 10 days prior.
Good morrow, my lords. What news?
He also spent significant screen time finding and bringing Jacaerys to his small council meeting, reasoning that
He'll be king one day, he must begin his instruction.
only to send him away before actually getting down to any kind of business. Remember how in Season 1, Corlys sent his fleet to establish a sea blockade?
A total blockade of the shipping lanes will be in place in days, if not already.
I alone patrol over 100 miles of open sea endlessly to hold the blockade.
Well, now it seems Rhaenys kind of forgot that the Valyrian fleet is already in place.
My Lord Husband's blockade of the gullet moves into place. All seaborne trade to King's Landing will soon be cut off.
And while blocking sea trade is all well and good, it works a little too well. This alone shouldn't create such an immediate and devastating food shortage. While King's Landing does import basic food like grains from abroad, the majority of import is relatively luxurious, not necessities for survival.
There ain't nothing left.
However, if land trade were cut off as well, especially from the breadbasket areas in the Riverlands and the Reach, a starving capital could have made sense. And with House Beastbury already favoring Rhaenyra, it even could have been quite a compelling development, but
Alas.
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 this is not explored by the show. And from the Greens' perspective, if the sea blockade is such a pressing problem, then why not do something about it?
That treasonous blockade won't last long.
The blockade is patrolled at any given time, at best, by Meleese and Moondancer, a duo which Vhagar and Sunfire ought to overpower without much difficulty. The show never once suggests that the Velaryon fleet is equipped with scorpions either, so there really is no reason for Aegon not to simply just
Send Vhagar to burn it to ash.
Mysaria stowing away on a small merchant vessel is another can of white worms. First of all, Eric is wearing armor at sea. Death sentence. Secondly, in episode 10, the show made the point that the Greens had Mysaria killed, but here we see her alive and well. Why kill her only to bring her back an episode later? It's not like it made a difference either way at the time.
So what was the f***ing point in all this then?
Also, the whole city knows about the Velaryon blockade, and Mysaria is too clever to think that she can make it past undetected, so she must intend to be found, right? Then again, why would she want to be caught? Was it to weasel her way into Dragonstone, support the Blacks, and get her revenge on Larys in the Hightowers for the attempt on her life? Did she touch a weirwood tree and have a prophetic vision? The show never explains this, and things just kind of work out for her from here on out. As a result of the blockade, Hugh reports to court that
Iron costs have grown. A lone scorpion takes weeks to build.
But earlier in the same episode, we saw fresh, fully functioning scorpions being manned already.
Dragon! Arm the scorpion!
And later in episode 2, we see at least 4 scorpions on the walls of the Red Keep. Have they been here since Aegon the Conqueror's days? No, they look too freshly forged for that. So did Otto secretly have them made without showing us? Or are you telling me that they magically completed months of work in just a few days? Then Daemon makes his way to King's Landing by boat under the cover of night. but with a lantern that somehow doesn't blow his cover. He also puts on the sloppiest disguise ever, and the first guard he approaches just so happens to be a sympathizer.
I'm told you bear a mislike for the high towers.
The high towers.
Oh, and remember that time when Rhaenyra was a cunning spider who drew Alicent into her net and intoxicated her?
Rhaenyra is a cunning spider. Long ago, she drew Alicent into her web, intoxicated her.
Yeah, me neither, because it never happened. Is he talking about that time when they tore a page from a book and said the septa?
The scepter. Rhaenyra!
Surely not. I'm all for custom-made candle holders, but I'm pretty sure medieval candles couldn't possibly burn this hard. Mere wax or oil wouldn't create this kind of pressure. We're surely looking at some kind of gas here, but where's it coming from? Dragon shit?
What do dragons eat, anyway?
Fermented crab.
When Blood and Cheese sneak into the castle to kill Aemond, there are no guards anywhere around the royal apartments, not even Kingsguard.
Why has Helena the Queen been granted no sworn protector?
And when they find and threaten Helena with a knife to her throat, instead of asking her where to find Aemond, they choose to kill her son Jaehaerys instead, going against Aemond's explicit instructions.
You're to find and slay the Prince Aemon Targaryen.
What if we can't find him?
A son for a son, he said.
Only Daemon never said that. Unless, of course, their conversation with Daemon did continue off-screen. But even then, knowing Daemon, he would more likely threaten to have them killed for failing. He's out to exact Rhaenyra's vengeance on Aemon for killing Lucerys, after all. Her wish was very specific.
I want Aemond Targaryen.
Unlike the ambivalent show, the characters in the book are a lot crueler, and Daemon does explicitly order the assassination of one of Helena's children as retribution for Lucerys. No misunderstandings to speak of, just straight up a son for a son. A scene which is a lot more gruesome in the book, with Blood and Cheese making Helena choose which of her children should die. In the aftermath of Jaehaerys' assassination, Aemon finds his coins stolen, from which he magically draws the conclusion that
Daemon sent them to kill me.
An ultra-specific assumption to make, seeing as stealing coins isn't exactly unthinkable for hired assassins. And after catching and questioning the Gold Cloak, they find out that he had a rat catcher accomplice, but not who exactly, before Aegon comes in and kills him. Sure, the Gold Cloak says,
I don't know his right name.
But instead of having him identify the right guy and getting the satisfaction of killing both assassins, he kills the one and hangs every rat catcher in the king's employ, damaging his reputation to no benefit. But I guess Aegon needs to be stupid so Rhys Ifans can win an Emmy or whatever.
The king is my grandson, and my grandson is a fool!
Back on Dragonstone, Daemon is already back from his little midnight murder trip, and apparently
The damage to our position is immeasurable.
You have weakened my claim to the throne, my ability to raise an army, my standing among my own council.
News of Rhaenyra's monstrous crime spreads through the realm. The great houses falter. They cannot but come to our side.
Only this supposedly disastrous blow to Rhaenyra's position never actually materializes in any sort of consequences whatsoever. Sure, Link Bracken brings it up later in episode 3,
Babe killer.
but that also doesn't lead anywhere, so...
It does not matter.
After having sent an assassin across the bay just the day before, the Blacks have put no security measures of their own in place at the Dragonstone Harbor, allowing just about anyone to come and go unchecked, including a Kingsguard freshly arrived from the capital. And Mysaria is somehow the only one to think that any Kingsguard of theirs should already be at Dragonstone.
The enemy is about, good sir.
Reflecting on who might have sent Eric to slay Rhaenyra, Rhaenys assumes that
Otto Hightower would never have allowed this. Hotter blood has prevailed, I think.
But why would she think that? He even had this exact idea back in Season 1.
Lord Commander Westerling, take your knights to Dragonstone. Be quick and be clean.
When arriving at Harrenhal, Daemon does something crazy even for him and abandons his dragon, his only leverage, to sneak in alone and take a castle that, for all he knows, could be full of enemies. Dragon! Luckily for him, there's only one man there whom he swiftly Hollywood knockouts. Remember
Sir Gawain Hightower of Old Town!
From Season 1? Well, this is him 16 years later. But why is he in King's Landing? Is it for the war effort? Well, that doesn't make much sense, seeing as he left Old Town 3 months ago, well before Viserys died and Aegon usurped the Iron Throne.
How exhilarating to arrive at court after 3 long months on the road.
What was the original purpose of making this journey before the hostilities began?
I don't know anything.
Then, Kristen and Gwaine ride out to war, and in the very next scene, Rhaenys, whose job it is to scout for military movements, comes to report that...
Still no sightings, no men, no horses, no ships,
Like, what are they even paying you for? In order to prevent the war from escalating, Rhaenyra comes up with a plan to seek out Alicent and talk things out peacefully.
I must see her, face to face.
However, there are a few problems with this. Firstly, Alicent is not in a position to de-escalate the war herself, and Rhaenyra has no reason to assume that she has enough influence on the people that do. And for all Rhaenyra knows, Alicent is still inclined to see her son on the throne.
What everyone in the realm knows is that one day you will be our king.
Remember, just because Alicent raised her cup to Rhaenyra that one time doesn't cancel out all those years of interminable infighting.
Where is duty? Where is sacrifice?
Secondly, it's a f***ing suicide mission. Even if she could make it into the city and luck out on finding Alicent precisely when and where she needs to be, she'd still be smack in the middle of enemy territory, where worst could come to worst at any time, not to mention how difficult getting out would be, even if everything goes to plan.
There are fishing boats aplenty in the bay.
Quiet, woman.
But she goes ahead with the suicide mission and strolls right into King's Landing, where they apparently didn't learn a goddamn thing from the Crown Prince being assassinated not 2 episodes ago.
Sorry, lack of vigilance.
She also lets her silver hair show through the disguise and walks right up to Alicent to take her hostage, kind of, but not really.
If I could cry out, your knights would find me, I would be taken or slain. But not before I killed you.
Now, the problem with this is that trading themselves for each other is by no means a fair exchange. All Alicent really needs to do at any time is to get the step on Rhaenyra and call the guards. Or even straight up sacrifice herself and the Greens win the war on the spot.
One of the worst deals ever.
Then, when they, surprise, surprise, can't come to an agreement, Rhaenyra lets Alicent go, free to call the guards on her. What's worse is that Alicent doesn't, and Rhaenyra is free to go home and continue waging war in peace. Well, you know what I mean.
Our lords in the Crown Lands are grousing. Their herds of livestock struggle to keep pace with the dragon's relentless appetites.
Aha, but how is this a problem already? Doesn't Westeros have a long-going production line of dragon feed? And even if the naval blockade prevents vital cattle from being imported, it's only been in place for about a fortnight, and the ripple effects wouldn't be felt by the population just yet. Then Jace the Face wants to go fight for the cause.
Send me.
No,
I will
you
even
lack
raise
the
alarm.
experience.
Only so does everyone except Daemon and Corlys.
You've seen no more battles than I have.
When saddling up for the battle at Rook's Rest, Rhaenys says to her dragon, even though neither of them have actually been in a battle before. Unless you count the massacre of the small folk in episode 9, of course. Then, after fighting Sunfire and being burned by Vhagar fresh off the bench, Rhaenys decides to fight some more.
Angos Melis.
The problem is that while Meleys is younger and quicker than Vhagar, she also just fought, which must have been quite exhausting. So she's coming up against a rested opponent who is much bigger and badder and has tons of battle experience, and it makes absolutely no sense not to run back to Dragonstone. She also fastens her seatbelt only just now, and while I'm aware that Rhaenys is a strong, independent woman, I have to ask, did she actually manage to hold on with her bare hands earlier when the 2 dragons were battling and fire was hurled at her face? Anyway, Rhaenys, in all her wisdom, then decides not to use what agile advantage Meleys has and flies straight into Vhagar's claws. And despite all that fire being hurled at them, their hair remains perfectly intact.
Schwarzkopf professional hair care for you.
Then these soldiers get knocked down without being touched. Then, when Vhagar takes a heavy landing, killing its momentum and leaving Aemon wide open for a chomp or a fireball to the face, Rhaenys neglects this golden opportunity and flies away. So far, in fact, that they lose sight of Vhagar, who is still struggling to take off again. And as if that weren't bad enough, not only does Rhaenys choose to engage again, but Vhagar bursts up from behind Rook's Rest Castle with impossible momentum to save the CGI budget from running out. Let me know if you agree with this or not, but isn't this eerily reminiscent of Daenerys and the Iron Fleet in Game of Thrones Season 8? Bear in mind, Vhagar is just coming off a staggering restart after crashing down and would need tremendous momentum, not to mention impeccable timing to pull this off. And the time it would take to create this momentum would have been enough for Meleys to spot her. Then Criston rocks up to where Aegon fell, and despite already having found him, asks,
"Where is his grace?"
Then he collapses, as if he ever really cared for this little rapist. As if his allegiance to the Greens wasn't entirely based on his grudges against Rhaenyra and his relationship with Alicent. Episode 5 starts off with Kristen and crew having teleported back to King's Landing, and instead of rushing the king to get the urgent medical care he needs, they parade him through the streets in a wooden box.
These next hours are most critical.
Not only that, but it turns out a sword has been transported in the very same box for some reason. Just safety hazards all over the place.
Is there any gold left in your coffers?
Enough to keep this small establishment you see fed and warm.
Okay, so how are they feeding Caraxes? Is he roaming the countryside and feeding himself? No, obviously not. The good people of the Riverlands would be flocking to Harrenhal and we wouldn't hear the end of it. I don't suppose wild animals like squirrels and foxes or even boar is enough to sustain this multi-ton behemoth, so what does Caraxes eat?
Whatever they want.
Shut up, Daenerys. Back on Dragonstone, Alfred claims that
my loyalty to you is proven, my queen.
Your loyalty, perhaps.
Only we've never seen or heard of any instance where Alfred's loyalty was ever tested or proven. Where in Seven Hells did he even come from? Was he even in Season 1? No! They're literally making this up just now. Then he claims that
it is merely that the gentler sex has not been much privy to the strategies of battle or their execution.
Which, in plain English, means their women don't know anything about planning or fighting a war. A particularly random thing to say, seeing as
you've seen no more battles than I have.
Oh, and the one person who actually did go to battle so far just so happened to be a woman. Then Lord Celtigar makes the crucial observation that
Vhagar is depleted after such a hard-fought battle.
And yet, at no point during this buffer period while Vhagar is recovering does anyone so much as suggest sending Cyrax, Vermax, Moondancer, or even calling on Daemon and Caraxes to fly on useful missions, like securing marriage pacts and hostages from other houses, while Vhagar is recovering. And only once is it suggested that they attack King's Landing while they have the chance.
If we can strike King's Landing before their dragon is recovered...
Then I myself must do it.
You are the crown. It is out of the question.
But after that, it's all quickly forgotten about and never brought up again. In the next scene with Daemon, the Riverlands, known to be plain and fertile, are now mountainous. Then, when the Brackens refuse to submit, not only does Daemon not go through with his threat,
bend the knee to me, or your house burns.
But he tells Willem Blackwood that he must intimidate the Brackens now.
There are things the crown itself must not be seen to do.
However, after Willem commits his atrocities and the Riverlords come to Harrenhal to complain about it, they drop this little nugget.
These beasts proudly carried the banner of House Targaryen.
While it stands to reason that Willem might go above and beyond Daemon's instructions, it doesn't make any sense for the Blackwoods to carry Targaryen banners while doing it. That goes against Daemon's only instruction after all. And where did they even get those banners in the first place? I don't suppose they have a bunch of Targaryen banners laying around just in case. Or did they set every able hand to sew up banners overnight before going off to rape and pillage?
I think not.
And what, these Riverlords came all this way just for one brief neurotic conversation?
Know this, we shall not raise our banners for a tyrant.
Right. And how do you think Daemon the Rogue Prince Targaryen responds to such treason? That's right, he lets them walk away.
7 hells.
Later that evening, Rhaenyra recalls the small council meeting from earlier, only not very accurately.
The way they spoke at my small council today.
My loyalty to you is proven, my queen.
They speak around me, not to me.
I could never doubt your capability.
Perhaps it is time for you to think about secreting yourself somewhere safe.
They wish to keep me here, confined.
At the small council, Grand Maester Orwyle reports that the king will be indisposed for some time. But instead of the hand of the king immediately taking his place, as is customary,
it is known,
they, for whatever reason, endeavor in a choosing that somehow doesn't result in the hand of the king ruling in the king's absence.
Did you have a candidate in mind, Your Grace?
Not only that, but now the show also tries to shoehorn in the notion that Alicent used to run the show back when Viserys was on the decline.
I myself served in this role of my husband.
Yeah, no, that was Otto Hightower, the Hand of the King, remember him?
Men would sooner put the realm to the torch than see a woman ascend the Iron Throne.
Feeble! But the Dowager Queen is a woman.
Talk about having the cake and eating it too. Later in the courtyard, Alicent suddenly assumes the worst about Aemon based on no information whatsoever.
You know what he is, what he has somehow become.
And what has he become, Alicent? So far, the worst he's done, as far as you're aware, is losing control of Vhagar and accidentally killing Lucerys at one time. If anything, Aegon is the one who should give Alicent cause to worry. You know, the guy who got drunk and raped the household staff for years, hanged a slew of innocent rat catchers, and flew into battle without telling anyone? Or what, did some undisclosed Rook's Rest eyewitness tell her that Aemon intentionally roasted Aegon while battling Rhaenys? Because we sure never saw a conversation like that happen. Or did Deus Ex Helena divulge another convenient vision that Alicent suddenly adheres to after years of dismissing them? Or was it something else? In order to keep the people from spreading fear outside the capital, Aemon's first decree as
so-called Prince Regent
is to close the gates of King's Landing, making it even harder to feed the people than it already was.
No one is to leave or enter save with our consent.
But who cares? Congratulations, you now have an even unhappier population to feed, which you can't. Add to that the increased hustle of getting food into the city if every merchant needs to go through an extra filter, making things even more scarce and expensive. Then the starving small folk erupt in an unlikely call for They're not calling for the basics, like grain or bread.
Please, your grace, we're hungry!
Bread, your grace!
Now, why is that such a problem? Well, meat is expensive, and starving people crying out for luxury goods like that makes as much sense as Hugh selling his daughter for a fresh trim and some beard oil. Which, now that I'm thinking about it, might actually have happened, but never mind that now. Over at the Twins, Jacaerys meets with the Freys of the Crossing.
Our Lord Grover Tully has not declared for Rhaenyra.
And Lord Frey wrongfully uses the expression
means death to bear steel against your liege.
And while I appreciate a callback to the good old days as much as the next guy,
my Lord Father taught me it was death to bear steel against your liege, Lord.
This is not a euphemism for rebellion. It refers to literally pulling a weapon on one's liege. Then Jacaerys grants them Harrenhal, which as far as renovation objects go is
the largest in the world.
And in return, all he asks is allowing the Starks to cross and the Freys' allegiance to Rhaenyra. A ridiculous bargain considering they're about to snap up the Tullys, to whom the Freys are already sworn anyway. Speaking of Harrenhal, here's Daemon, who somehow has received word of Aegon's condition.
That fool Aegon is unlike to survive.
How does he know Aegon survived Rook's Rest in the first place, let alone his current condition?
This is a truly pathetic show.
Remember Aemon and Kristen's master plan of taking Rook's Rest?
After Cold smashes it, we'll have Dragonstone effectively cut off by land.
Well, now after Alfred leaves Dragonstone for Harrenhal, we see him riding on the mainland. No resistance or trouble, no enemies, nothing.
I left a meager garrison behind to protect it. So what was the f***ing point in all this then?
In Aemon's second small council meeting as regent, people wrongly refer to him as Your Grace instead of My Prince.
There is a large dragon in the Riverlands, Your Grace.
The Dowager Queen speaks wisely, Your Grace. Your Grace.
His Grace.
Your Grace.
I am the Prince Regent.
And back on Dragonstone, guards spawn out of thin air. Then Alice contradicts everybody's favorite character from Season 1 by suggesting that
Viserys never wanted it himself, if you recall.
And yeah, no, I don't recall. At no point before this have we ever seen or heard it even suggested that Viserys
never wanted it.
On the contrary, Viserys even discussed a desire to leave a legacy behind.
What will they say of me when the histories are written? There is a part of me wishes I'd been tested.
So this notion is completely shoehorned in retroactively to teach Daemon a lesson, and comes again in one of Daemon's visions in episode 7.
I never wanted it.
When Steffan Darklyn of the Queensguard attempts to claim sea smoke, the Valyrian dragon tamers stand unreasonably close, exposing themselves to the unnecessary risk of getting bathed in dragonfire. You would have thought they, with all their experience, would know better. In Season 1, Aemon made it very clear what a competent ruler he would be if only given the chance.
It is I, the younger brother, who studies history and philosophy. It is I who trains with the sword. It is I who should be...
But now that he does rule, he neglects the most basic needs of his people for no good reason other than the show needs him to be ruthless now.
There is not food enough in the city.
All the more reason Sir Tyler must break the blockade. Why is this anger directed at us?
They still look to you to ensure their well-being, which is the burden of authority.
So much for studying history, I suppose. Then Larys calls him Your Grace again and says,
It does occur to me that Your Grace has yet to name a hand.
Even though, you know, Kristen Cole is still a thing, necklace and all. When Rhaenyra's first care package boat is found, mist dims the other boats in the first shot, only for the mist to be gone in the next. Not only does it take well into the afternoon for the starving small folk to discover Rhaenyra's ships full of food, But when they do and frantically start rushing to claim a piece, the Kingsguard decide that the best way to keep Alicent and Helena safe from the frenzied smallfolk is to take them out of the safety of the Sept.
Get the queens to the wheelhouse!
And straight through the mob he's trying to protect them from. When Larys goes to bond with Aegon, he tells of the day he was born.
My lungs were strong, but my foot so twisted that my father named it sorcery.
Cool story, bro. It's just that Lionel Strong didn't become Hand of the King thanks to his superstition. He was arguably the most rational character in the show after Gwaine.
I'm rational.
So, all this naming it sorcery looks like another case of the writers not watching their own show.
Accusing a member of our household of casting malign spells.
And even if this is just a story Larys tells Aegon to seem vulnerable, the show makes absolutely no suggestion that this is manipulation, in neither this scene nor later. Then Mysaria goes on a spree in what is the most error-ridden piece of dialogue since Sansa Stark in Season 7.
You, I think, are steadfast. You have seen me as worthy, as an equal even. I believe you are meant to be queen.
Huh? Okay, so whinging and complaining is apparently steadfast? Treating people as subjects makes them equals? And now Mysaria believes Rhaenyra's purpose is divine?
I thought you'd be pleased.
I bet you did, Ryan. I bet you did. It's just that Mysaria was previously made out to be somewhat of a champion of the people, a clever, reasonable person who serves the realm, quite like Varys from Game of Thrones.
But I cannot gainsay that which the gods have laid before me.
Then, just as Ray and Mysaria are getting it on, Sir Laurent barges into the royal chamber without knocking to deliver news that are far from urgent enough to barge in without knocking.
The dragon sea smoke has been sighted flying over Spicetown.
All right.
Lord Grover is dead.
And you know what that means.
How do you know all this?
It's a funeral, Sansa, not rocket science.
Lord Oscar raised up in his place. In his wisdom, he has pledged his house and yours to me.
Oh yeah, about that.
Why should we now follow a boy younger than my own sons?
So the River Lords came all this way, again, straight into the jaws of the Dragon Lord, unsure whether they actually want to ally with him. Daemon could seize them all and hold them all hostage, forcing their houses to comply, but I guess they kind of forgot. Last episode, Jacaerys was the one to suggest they recruit Targaryen bastards to claim the remaining dragons.
There could be scores of them.
To suddenly being a raging classist who draws the line at nobility.
The lowborn claiming dragons. Was it her idea? Lady Mysaria? These people are mongrels.
As Rhaena departs the Eyrie, she decides to take a hike and find Sheepstealer, a quest that could take days, weeks, or forever. Remember, the Vale is huge and inhospitable, but Rhaena runs off without provisions or escort to fend for herself against wind, weather, and clansmen who won't hesitate to feed your manhood to the goats given half a chance.
I am no man.
Oh, and she also sprints at one point as if that would make her more likely to find the dragon instead of dehydrating and dying. In order to recruit the previously mentioned Targaryen bastards, Rhaenyra spreads the word using her spy network.
They're looking for Targaryen bastards. The barkeep from the Seven Maesters is going, and two of the girls from Mothers.
Oh, the Dragon Lord! Oh, the Dragon Lord!
But despite everyone and their dog knowing what to do and where to go, the Master of Whisperers and the Greens have somehow conveniently missed all of it. And no guards are waiting for the defectors on the beach. When the first bastard to claim a dragon steps up, Rhaenyra says,
I have nothing more to tell you. It must be the dragon who speaks.
But from Season 1, we know that you do well to speak Valyrian, be assertive, and probably many more things she could totally tell them.
You must hold mastery over your dragon.
And after last time's disaster, not only for the person trying to claim a dragon, but bystanders as well, Rhaenyra doesn't set up any perimeters whatsoever. Apart from keeping a safe distance herself, that is.
You are steadfast.
Then Hugh runs out into the open only to run right back again. Then Ulf runs through the caves of Dragonstone knowing there are other dragons about, wandering aimlessly and without trying to hide or find his way back to the only known exit. But it's fine because the story needs him to claim a dragon, so there you go. And when Ulf and Silverwing go for their virgin flight over King's Landing, not only is nobody firing scorpions, but Aemond, who has previously had no interest in going straight to Dragonstone and killing everyone, now decides to go to Dragonstone and kill everyone.
Where's that ghost, Vhagar? No pass!
Only that opportunity expired literally just now, as Ray poses out here with the other Avengers for no apparent reason other than it looks cool, I guess. Also, after the Dragons of Dragonstone were claimed, what happened to the surviving bastards?
Each of you has left behind a life to answer this call. A life to which you might never return.
Were they sent home, kept to serve in the castle, sent back to King's Landing to be executed as traitors, fed to the dragons? It might seem trivial, but keep in mind that the show spent significant time getting them there and making Rhaenyra out to be someone who, unlike the Greens, actually cares about the people.
I know the struggles of the small folk of King's Landing. They will be ruled either by you or by the usurper, and only one of you has shown yourself to be merciful.
The season finale kicks off with Tyland Lannister having teleported past Rhaenyra's blockade to meet with the Triarchy in Tyrosh.
There's no time for any of this.
Aemond, who up until this point had been made out to be cool and calculating.
Do not mourn me, mother. It was a fair exchange.
Someone cut down the f***ing rat catchers.
Lashes out at finding out the Blacks have more dragons by burning an innocent town.
He has gone in fury to Sharp Point and laid waste to the whole of the town.
Not the blockade starving the city, not the lone dragon at Harrenhal, not an enemy army, castle, or any kind at all, but an innocent town to no benefit whatsoever.
F***ing mad
In the filler scene where Gwaine suddenly confronts Kristen in front of everybody about
the Queen of the Seven Kingdoms. Former Queen.
Kristen says Alicent saved his life twice.
Once from the headsman's axe and once from myself.
And while Alicent indeed saved him from himself that one time, she never saved him from no headsman's axe. Unless, of course, he refers to that time he confessed to boning Rhaenyra.
My oath has been broken. I have dishonored myself. I would ask only this. You would sentence me mercifully to death.
But Alicent never made a big deal out of that, so it surely can't be that.
Thank you for your honesty, Sir Kristen. You may go.
Or perhaps he's referring to that time when he murdered Joffrey Lonmouth at a royal wedding. But then again, if that were the case, shouldn't he have also been sentenced to death and saved a third time after murdering Lord Beesbury in episode 9?
Well, I have no part!
Either way, this is the first time we're hearing about him coming close to being executed, because it never happened. In episode 6, Alice goes to Riverrun, kills Grover Tully, gets away with it, and now, only 2 episodes later, she's somehow back already. For reference, Sir Alfred left Dragonstone at full speed at the end of episode 5, traveled less distance, and still took 1 episode longer to get there. When Rhaenyra arrives at Harrenhal to see about Simon Strong's warning that Daemon might betray her, she walks right into the Dragon's Den without any guarantees or protection.
Come see for yourself.
Yes, you've got Cyrax and Seasmoke lurking about, but what can they do if Daemon decides to take Rhaenyra hostage and claim the throne himself like she fears? Despite the crown prince being assassinated, the enemy king and queen successfully sneaking in and out of the city unnoticed, and boats full of propaganda landing on their shores, it takes the government of King's Landing until episode 8 to do something about harbor security.
Let no vessel come or go from our harbor without our inspection.
Oh, and about that. Here's Alicent freshly arrived at Dragonstone.
Why have you come here?
I don't know anything.
Then Alicent would have us believe this.
What of Aegon?
He still heeds his mother.
What would you have me do, Mother?
Nothing.
12 seconds later.
Then we have people wearing armor at sea again. Just imagine that, putting on tens of kilos of metal plates just to board your ship. They're not even about to go to battle. Let's just say health and safety is not going to like this. In the season 1 finale, Rhaenyra completes her 5th pregnancy, a miscarriage by the way, as well as finds out her son has been devoured by a dragon, which leaves her scarred and thirsty for revenge. But only 2 episodes later, she's done grieving, doesn't care for revenge anymore, and rocks slick figure-hugging clothing showing no traces of physical or mental trauma at all. Many have pointed out how crucial the Riverlands are going to be to win the war.
The Riverlands are essential, Your Grace.
Path to King's Landing is through the Riverlands.
The Riverlands are the key to the war.
And yet, no one is particularly eager to go and actually get them to their side. Only Daemon actually does this eventually.
I'm claiming Harrenhal.
Apparently so.
Moreover, shouldn't any dragon that isn't busy guarding something be sent to persuade as many lords as possible to join their side? In Season 2, only the Freys and Brackens were visited by dragon riders, and that was ultimately pointless as Daemon secures the support of the Tullys, to whom, of course, the Freys and the Brackens are already sworn. Every now and again throughout the season, suggestions are made that Daemon might betray Rhaenyra and may harbor ambitions to take the throne for himself.
Find out his intentions.
Intentions?
Whether he means to raise a host for me or for himself.
He would not dare.
Wouldn't dare.
However, nothing concrete ever happens to suggest that this might be the case. And while Daemon does suggest he might supplant Rhaenyra to Alice, like once, no one else knows about that, so all these fluctuating assumptions about his loyalty are completely baseless.
I fear he may have turned against me.
While not completely forgotten and never mentioned again like Rick and Stark,
And your brother, what's his name?
Rhaenys never gets a funeral or ceremony commemorating her memory and sacrifice like they did for Lucerys in episode 1.
The thought of her lying in a field, broken amongst her enemies.
Alice Rivers is made out to be this enigma, and she clearly has mystical connections, is able to teleport, know impossible things, and more. But the show can't seem to decide whether she's a real person or not.
I'm a barn owl.
For example, here she is disappearing into thin air behind Simon Strong, but later in episode 6, Simon does mention her by name.
Our own healer, Alice Rivers, volunteered her renowned skills.
Mysaria's claim to fame at Dragonstone is her spy network.
I know the workings of the Red Keep and the movements of those who serve there.
It's just that Laris knows about that and has already dealt with it.
There is a web of spies at work in the Red Keep. They must be taken out at the head. They no longer breathe our air.
And fine, they do send out the Little Red Riding Hood to re-establish the network in episode 5, but updates keep flooding in like Mysaria's agents have unlimited data on their phones.
There is good news to be had.
Do you know what has happened this last hour?
Several characters see their values swing back and forth to suit whatever plot development comes next. Rhaenyra goes from being pushed over the edge and demanding Aemon's head,
I want Aemond Targaryen,
to not caring about vengeance anymore.
I had hoped my advantage may be in deterrence.
And then back to burning them all again.
You'll fly in 2 days' time, and their armies all must be subdued.
You wish for us to kill innocents?
To be honest, I never really cared much for them, innocent or otherwise.
Mysaria goes from championing the people.
I know the struggles of the small folk of King's Landing. You have shown yourself to be merciful.
To be the one to encourage Rhaenyra to burn those innocents alive.
He left you with no choice. Be strong. You know you are just. You must prevail.
Up until episode 1, Aemond is described by others as
fiercely loyal. He wishes to please.
My brother at least knows his place. He's as loyal as a hound.
And while it might make sense for Aemond to take out Aegon and make it look like an accident after all those years of bullying, him becoming a ruthless monster and everyone somehow knowing about it doesn't quite check out.
He will not stop at burning Sharp Point.
You know what he is, what he has somehow become. You burned him, and you let him fall. I saw it.
We must leave King's Landing quickly, because the Prince Regent is going to kill you.
While it's totally thinkable for someone to step up when elevated to the status of Lord, Oscar Tully's drastic change from docile, stuttering youth...
My prince, my grace, your grace...
to the most confident man in Westeros, completely unafraid of squaring up with the king consort...
That last bit seems unnecessary, don't you think?
...is a transformation that's tougher to swallow than pigeon pie at a purple wedding.
Oh dear.
Thanks for watching.